What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the greatest podcast in the world, baby. Shooting the shit uncensored. You know who this is. It's the truth, the dad bod god, the bald, the beard, the beautiful Piers Austin. And you're not seeing double, you're seeing two. And you are seeing the one, the only, the original OG, the man with the three largest legs in professional wrestling, Robbie motherfucking Zucco. Welcome back to the show, Robbie. That's it. That's it. Live studio audience is just lapping it up.
I appreciate the grand entrance, Pierre. That's fantastic. It's good as always. But tonight, I'm actually excited. That's not an understatement. I'm actually excited because this time around, we're not going to be looking at controversial type of interviews. We're actually going to be looking at a quality athlete, someone that's been in the business for a long time and actually had wrestling talk. This is something that I've been really wanted to have a podcast with this gentleman, and it'll be refreshing to actually get to see his point of view about the wrestling business. So I can't wait to pick his brain.
Oh, yeah, but you know what? Before we bring out our guest, the one and only Damian Slater, you know we got to talk about our sponsor for tonight's episode. And Rob, do you want to give this one a plug or do you want me to do it?
No, I'm terrible at this shit, so you give it a go. I'll just go sleeves. No, you go for it, please.
Make sure you go and check out sleefs.com. That's SLEEFS, sleefs.com. If you or someone you know is an athlete, you need to go and check out Sleefs. They've got all your athletic gear and wear covered. They've got those armbands, compression pants, compression shorts, headbands, boots, mouth guards, and they've even got those dirty boxes that you know the truth is always rocking. And let me tell you something, Rob, these dirty boxes are incredible. They stay dry, they stay fresh, and man, like they've got these funky designs on the front of them. They're pretty cool, man. I guarantee everyone needs to go and check out Sleefs and those dirty boxes. But when they do, they can use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount at their final purchase. So go and check it out.
I'm definitely going to buy those elephant ones with the elephant trunk hanging at the front. That's definitely something I'm going to get.
Of course, man. That seems like something that you would get, bro. But look, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into tonight's episode. Let's get in with the one, the only Damian Slater, baby. Boom. Welcome back to the greatest podcast in the world, Shooting the Shit. Damian Slater, welcome back, man. Great to see you again.
Thanks for having me, lads. It's always a pleasure. One of my favorite podcasts. And I'm a little bit disappointed that I'm not another controversial guest. I thought that was why I was here, but
well, it is shooting the shit uncensored, man. So, like, there is no holding back on any topic here, bro. This is the place where everyone's feelings get checked at the door. But before we get into that, man, it is great to see you, man. You know, you're looking well. How's things been going, you know, over in at EPW? I know Davis Storm took an injury recently, you know, and how's everything been going over there? How's his recovery been? And has that sort of, have you had to sort of step up in more of a leadership role since his injury?
Yeah, no, things are going really well. Like from a show point of view, I think over the last couple of years, we went from COVID being pretty difficult as it was for everyone. And then major venue issues. We lost our major venue, which was a really, really cool spot for pro wrestling. And we were kind of left in limbo where Perth, not quite like the East Coast, we don't have a lot of quality venues in that, you know, that kind of 200 to 800 crowd range, but we bounced back really well, and we've kind of been building momentum. We ran a stadium a couple months ago, got over 700 people, and then the other night I believe we got about 450 at another new venue. So things are we've got a lot of momentum, and things are really going well. I guess we're kind of on a bit of an island over here in Perth. We probably don't get heard of on the East Coast as much, but we've got a real happening scene at the moment. So yeah, super motivated, super excited. D-Storm obviously out at the moment, but from what I've heard, his recovery is going well, and he's done a little bit of training since, not himself, but training others. We've got a really cool crew, like a lot of coaches at EPW, and a lot of opportunities to train. So I haven't noticed much of a difference. I think the world's better without David Storm, to be honest.
Are making a lot of noise because we're hearing it from down here, and just from the actual show point of view, from the actual training center that you guys got going, I just see nothing but quality come through that. You know what I mean? Every time I see something, I'm getting impressed every single time. Is that something that everybody is all pulling together to work hard for? Like, or is it just like a one-man band just leading the charge, or how's it actually work down there?
No, I don't think it's ever been a one-man band here. It's always been a bit of a group in terms of everything, training, running the shows. There's always been, a big group of boys and girls who are kind of all putting in a lot of effort, and it's an incredible amount of effort I see from not just myself, but the higher ups who are putting the shows together, promoting them, and all the rest. So in terms of running it, no, it's a group effort. It's a collective, and I think when there is. We do have a great group of trainees and a large number of trainees, and I think that's built some really healthy competition. So everyone wants to get onto these main EPW shows, as we call them. And there's, to be honest, you've got 20, 25 people who are on the main shows quite often, and then you've got another 20 or so who aren't quite cracking that level, who are on what's called our showcase event. So that's kind of like our gym show, our house show. A really healthy roster, really healthy competition. And again, the last couple of years, I think all of that has helped build the quality that we're currently putting out at the moment.
One of the things like that I sort of like think about is it feasible? For example, right? Like, and I know putting on shows cost money and everything like that, but if someone has the facility, like a training facility, like a PWA, like an EPW, and I'm sure there's many others, so promotions, please don't start shooting me. I'm not going to name them all. But like, you could put in like X amount of people in there, say on a Friday night or a Saturday night, once a week or every 2 weeks, and you probably wouldn't even really need to promote it heavily, but just give someone like that sort of that talent that's training but it can't get out there, but also even the top tier talent can come and work with some of these other talent they wouldn't normally on a normal EPW show, and give them more of a balance. Is that something that would be even feasible? And like, I mean, like I said, if you've got your own talent and it's just a trainee showcase, like, and like I said, the advertisement wouldn't necessarily need to be there, but is that something that'd be feasible?
Essentially, that's what our showcases are. So we run showcases between all of our main shows. Right. So, a main EPW event maybe every 6 to 8 weeks at the moment. A showcase would be between that. So the showcases are intended as a place for wrestlers to get reps, not necessarily trainees. Like, we have more experienced talent, but as is the case with booking and running stories and things like that, not everyone gets an equal amount of minutes in the ring.
Of course.
Just circumstantial. There's always going to be some people who have to take a back seat for a period of time. So when they're not quite getting the minutes, that's where the showcases come into play. So we have experienced guys, we have young up-and-comers, and they're all kind of working together on those shows. And it's almost to the point now where it's a little bit of a plug and play. Like, anyone can kind of come into the building, flick a few switches, and we're not too far off being able to run a show. And that's still being streamlined a little bit, but it's allowed other people to take the reins. Like, we've had some of our roster come in, and for one night, they're the bookers, they're running the shows, they're doing the production meeting, and just kind of learning that part of the trade. And I myself, I'm one of the people that overlook the showcases. I try not to have too much of a part. I kind of just want to go hands off. I'll give my input and I'll give my feedback, but I want the others to run the show so I can watch it as a fan, as a experienced head. So that's kind of where we're at the moment, and we don't promote them much. They're just promoted on Facebook. The crowd sizes, to be honest, they're not great. We get our members in there. We get a few more, maybe 50, 60 people.
Yeah.
There was a time when that was getting up near 120, but we're starting to run more shows now, so that's kind of diluting the waters a little bit. But it's not there for that. We're not there to sell out and make a bunch of money. It's there for the experience and the reps. That's kind of what the showcases are.
No, that's great. Like as you said, and that's one word that really intrigued me: the reps, because technically, in my opinion, there's not enough wrestling to go around. You know what I mean? And to me, a professional wrestler technically should be working every day. You know what I mean? And that's what generally, if you do make that top level, which you once have, you wrestle every day. So I think it's good repetition for every single trainee or worker that you've got. So that's something that I think is really, really important.
100%. I think just personally, the biggest leaps I made in progress were always when I went overseas and immersed myself full time. So I'd go, a few months in Japan or America or wherever, and we were training every single day. We were wrestling 2-3 times a week, and that's where, regardless of the quality wasn't always there, even the training quality, the show quality, but I always came back on just a different level, just because I learned so much about myself and pro wrestling when you immerse yourself. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, like, because when you like, Rob, you've said that all the time. Like, if you want to really be successful, you have to sort of take that leap and you have to go overseas and you have to sort of immerse yourself in it.
Yeah,
do you think that like there can be people that can be successful without going overseas?
I think people have proved that before, surely.
Yeah. What you mean, just here, Piers? Like, what are you saying?
Yeah, like, you mean without having to go overseas? Do you think here in Australia there is talent that could make a full-time living off it without going overseas and getting to that level?
Well, I guess you have to look at people the likes of Matty Wahlberg. He didn't go overseas, you know what I mean? Yeah. And he got picked, and look where he's at now. So, but he was willing to do the hard work. So yeah, you can.
Buddy Matthews too.
Yeah, Buddy Matthews and Rhea Ripley. Did she go overseas?
Yeah, she
went to Japan briefly.
Did she go overseas?
For a short period, just a very short period in Japan.
Yeah, right.
But these guys are getting noticed here, of course, but that's because of the actual, exposure and obviously the social media and whatnot. But I'm sure they got the reps in as much as they could. I saw them traveling. They flew all the way down from, where was Buddy Murphy from Melbourne? He came down and did a lot of shows in Sydney and vice versa. So yeah, you definitely can, but it's harder, right? It's harder. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's the thing, like, there's always going to be the exception to the rule in everything, but not everyone can be the exception to the rule. So for me, I always tell everyone, tick every box you can, because that's at least going to get you better odds of doing great things. But if you're relying on luck or chance or being good at one single thing, you may get overlooked.
100%.
And because that's the thing, like, and I think I actually saw this in an interview where, like, someone asked Triple H what's something that he looks for when he's going to sign a talent. And they said, is it, they've got a good following on the indie scene? Is it they're a incredible professional wrestler out of their country? And he goes, no. He goes, the wrestling side of things, he goes, I can teach anyone to wrestle. He goes, that's the easy part. He goes, it's the other things that we want them to have. You know what I mean? The dedication, the look, all these other things that we don't have that we want. And he goes, that's what we look. He goes, the wrestling thing, to get someone to be a good wrestler, we can invest that time into them and get them to be a good wrestler. That's easy. He said, but everything else, that's the hard part.
Yeah, 100%. And that's going to change from this year to the next. You don't know what anyone's looking for at any one time. Unfortunately, pro wrestling is not it's not a competitive sport. You can't just win your way to the top. You have to impress and fit whatever box they want filled at that time. So yeah, that's why I say try to you know, have your strengths, but try to at least be pretty good at everything and try to be seen by as many different eyes as you can.
Yeah, it's important. It's definitely important.
So one of the things we were talking about earlier, and one of the things I was telling Robbie about is like, I'm really enjoying the content that you've been putting out recently. You know, just these short little minute clips, really sort of breaking down, you know, sort of training sort of things for the business, mindset as well for the business as well, which I thought was really cool. I think the most recent one I saw was about training overall and quality training. Yeah, what was the driving factor for you to start this?
You mean start the online stuff?
Yeah, start the online stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because I spent be close to 5 years now, hours and hours of time editing these long YouTube videos and getting like pretty good reach. And then the last probably 3 or 4 weeks, I started putting out these little like 30-second to 1 minute snippets of training that took zero effort, and I'm getting tens of thousands of views. That's just a little pet peeve. But
the attention span. Yeah,
100%.
But that's the world we live in. It's like the short, digestible content, like those 1 minute videos. Like, I'll be honest, I'll put like a 10-minute clip up on YouTube of an interview, and it'll get some decent reach or whatever. And then, but I'll put like a 1 minute short in the stories or whatever like that. Thousands of views, hundreds, you know what I mean? Like just ridiculous numbers. And I'm like, far out. Like,
work smarter, not harder. That's what it is.
Exactly.
But I mean, this is stuff I've been I've kind of been putting out into the world for a long time. 5 years ago, I made the decision to start what became my World Beater Wrestling channel, YouTube channel. And look, the purpose of that, many things. I just saw a big gap in that pro wrestling wasn't really capitalizing in the online space. And I take a lot of inspiration from outside wrestling. Like I've been involved in martial arts, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu I've been involved in for years. I've always been a big muso. I've followed a lot of bands and stuff like that. And I've always taken influence from those things. And I noticed that there was a lot of like jiu-jitsu tutorials, and I was just kind of picking it up again. And I would go online and just learn so much by watching these little tutorials. I was like, man, there's nothing for wrestling, for pro wrestling. I guess because pro wrestling's always been a little bit secretive, a little bit behind closed doors. You don't want to expose the business, even though 25 years ago we had Channel 7 with the greatest secrets of wrestling revealed. Like, you know, this has been done a million times before. But yeah, I just saw a little bit of a gap there, and I thought, you know, maybe this is a good way to get eyes on myself as a trainer, on EPW as a school. And it kind of took off from there. And what I thought was going to be, all right, I'll put out a few videos, no one's going to watch it, that's it, kind of snowballed. And yeah, like I've got a lot of ambition with that. I do want to do a lot with the online learning space, and that's a bit of a, you know, save the date. I've got a lot of things in the works to make it more of a real community where people can actually learn online properly, not just snippets of trainings that I put out once a week or twice a week. But that's to come. But yeah, for me, like I've never been one to want to keep everything contained. I've been able to learn a lot of incredible lessons from a lot of my travels and a lot of things I've done outside of wrestling. And you know, my day-to-day job as a primary school teacher, as a phys ed teacher, you know, like just so many little things I've learned along the way that I teach people, and it's like this big eye-opening moment. So I'm thinking, why is that just for Perth wrestlers? Why can't someone overseas? Why can't someone in Singapore, in America? Why can't they have these lessons too? So yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm just using the internet to spread it to whoever wants to listen, basically.
No, that's fantastic. And what's even funny is that those tutorials are better than half the wrestling schools that I've seen out there. So, you know, keep up that. Keep doing what you're doing, because it's actually working. You know? But it's true, though. You know what I mean? You want to see quality, and you can see it. I'm sure you've seen, like, you know, other people, other schools and whatnot, and then you scratch your head, you go, there's just things they're just not putting in. And then you're seeing their matches and they're not doing it right. So, you know, I think it's a big deal that people have the proper education, and it starts from the top and then it works its way down. Because if you see the actual top guy or the top promoter, you kind of know exactly how the workers are. You know what I mean? So it's I think it's important that that type of stuff is released. I mean, back in the day, I think it was 20 years ago, Les Thatcher used Nigel McGuinness and Matt Stryker to do that same tutorial, but in a book. But then, Paul Ondoff, he got wind of it, and he told Les Thatcher off for exposing the business. And he goes, "Well, fuck you! I didn't expose the business. It was a man." So you know what I mean. So that book's out there, but it's kind of like, as you said, it was like a hidden thing. So. But
I think the business was exposed so long ago now that no one would look at you and go, "Man, you're killing the business, slats."
Yeah,
like,
man.
seriously, like.
Yeah, stop killing the business, man. What are you doing?
And the thing is, though, a lot of that, like I get the no one has ever said that to me. Like no one, even even the old timers have never once said that or criticized me for that. But at the same time, a lot of what I'm putting out is how to keep the business legitimate and how to do things properly in legitimate ways. I've got a fairly extensive submission grappling background, and that's one of the things that I saw that people just weren't getting anymore. It was kind of from when I started 20 years ago, getting stretched out by my late trainer, Cole Devani, and that's kind of how I learned, was just getting beaten up and learning through osmosis. And I've just found that over the years, a lot of those fundamentals and the legitimacy behind it has kind of disappeared. And in that, I feel like it's affecting the way a lot of people wrestle. It's affecting the way they move, the way they sell, their footwork, their striking, everything. So a lot of what I'm trying to put out is not just exposing the business; it's making the business legitimate again. So
that makes sense, because I see a lot of people just always throw on the chin lock every single time, and they're going, surely that can't be your go-to. You know what I mean? Just go with something else. So short arm scissors, just something different. Abdominal stretch, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It just doesn't get done. You know what I mean? It's like that's the first thing they learn. The chin lock, and then they're turning the wrong way, and then it's just mind-boggling how that's like the first thing that they learn. They should be learning a lot of other submissions, because that's the way you did learn back in the day. You did learn how to hook a little bit. You know what I mean? You weren't like a killer, but you learned the fundamentals of that, and then the amateur stuff, and then the professional.
100%.
Well, I think like even back in the day, you had to learn to be able to at least be able to go. Like I remember hearing like Flair say, or Hogan, sorry, he's like, you know what I mean? Like when he was traveling all around the place, same with Flair, it's like someone decided they were gonna like become the world champ that night. And if you couldn't get yourself out of that situation, you're fucked.
Yeah, you get stretched for sure. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that like you say the legitimacy of wrestling? Are you saying that from the moveset, or are you saying that from the toughness of individuals? Like where does that sort of?
Yeah, the moveset 100%. Like, the whole like pro wrestling toughness. I don't care for that at all, because I'll tell you what, 4 times a week, I go into my local academy, and I've got a bunch of black belts who are half my size, twice my age, and they're choking me to death. So there's no toughness in pro wrestling. I don't buy that for a second. But no, in the moves, in the fundamentals, I find, to be honest, whether people want to admit it or not, the fundamentals are the biggest things I feel are lacking in the current generation, at the risk of sounding like an old man. But it's the one big thing I see. I see a lot of positives. Like when I look at the people coming through for camps that we run, we're running camps every year, every half year. I've just noticed that there's been a lot of positives. Like a lot of people are coming through, and they're a bit more savvy about the psychology of the business, how to structure matches, how to sell, things like that. I'm seeing a lot more knowledge of that. Whereas when I started 20 plus years ago, no one had a clue. Like we were never taught anything like that. We were taught your basic moves and how to break full, and that was it. And we just had to figure it out for ourselves. So I'm getting more of that side, but then I feel like the fundamentals are kind of lacking in a way. So that's where I'm trying to build things. I feel like that's going to help everything, because I look at where I started. I know you look back on where you started and when you started, you always look on it with rose-colored glasses. You think it was amazing. Then, you watch the footage and you go, yeah, that was a bit rough.
It's a shit.
what I noticed was in Adelaide when I was training under Cole Devani at the Monster Factory, the wrestlers coming through there, almost every single one of them, every single movement they did was crisp. They could do your basic moves
I remember
100%
that.
every time. They could break fall 100% every time.
I remember
And
that.
that's where I feel like now it's a bit, some people just can't do it. And some people come in and they can do the moves and they can do the high spots, but, I'll ask them to switch a hammerlock and they got no clue. So,
why do you think that is? Why do you think that they've developed that way?
I think a lot of it just comes down to things have been given a free pass, perhaps. It's hard for me to judge because I hate when people generalize, on one little thing they may have seen and they generalize a whole industry or a whole scene, a whole state, a whole promotion. I hate that. So I'm never going to judge anywhere where I've never actually been through their doors and watched their training. But what I've found just from my own kind of home base is that I feel like things get a little bit of a free pass. Things might not be perfect and it's kind of like, yeah, good enough. Let's move on. Let's learn the next thing. I know that when I started, if you didn't get it perfect 3 times in a row, you did it for the rest of training. There's the same move over and over and over. And if you didn't get it, you didn't get in the ring. We had to graduate from the mats at the start of every training, had to do every break fall perfectly, had to do a series of chain wrestling holds perfectly. Right. And until you could, you weren't allowed up in that ring. And I know that sounds harsh and old school, but it worked. And yeah, people probably got bored and left and never came back. But the ones that did stick around became very talented wrestlers, like your Jags and Havocs, like Jonah Rock. And they're the guys that ended up teaching a whole new generation. I feel like in some ways people have been given a free pass and it's too lenient. It's too, that's good enough.
But that is probably a way to weed people out by doing that and saying like who's willing to get to that stage. And it's like the people that fell off, it's like, when you hear stories of, 20, 30 years ago when people were training and, like, and it was a lot harder at all. Like they would physically try and break people to the point where they would want to quit. You know what I mean? So they would clean out like the weakest links or like not the weakest links, but the people who really wanted it, so to speak.
Yep. And when I first started Wrestle Rampage with Hartley Jackson, he started it, but I was there with him. And that was 2005. And we ran tryouts and they were like that. They were old school. They were, the first day was 6 hours. The second day was 3 to 4 hours. And in that time, it was just out in the park across the road doing just blow up drills and carrying people around a 400-meter park. And man, we had, people puking everywhere and people like leaving 10 minutes in because they couldn't handle it. And it's an old school approach. And the ones that made it through were very few and far between, but the ones that did make it through, most of them still around to this day and doing a fantastic job. And they learned very quickly because they had the heart to push through those difficult times. And that's just one mindset. I don't really subscribe to that mindset anymore. I'm very Switzerland. Like I'm very modern thinking with a bit of an old school flair. But hey, there's positives to both approaches. It just depends on where you want to take your company and what kind of feel you want from your training school.
Do you think the reason also too could be, now I'm just asking for your opinion here, that they watch a lot of the wrestling in this day and age? To me, a lot of these guys are a lot more advanced with advanced moves, bigger move set, and you don't see a lot of it on the TV, the basic holds and whatnot. Back in the 80s, almost every match used to see the same basic. Do you think it's because what they're watching, they just say, well, that's what they're doing, so we're going to do that too? Do you think that's the mindset as well at all? Or do you think it's, just tell me if it's rubbish or not? So,
no, I agree 100%. I think that's definitely the case. I was an Attitude Era kid. Like I started watching in 99.
It's all punch and kicks and whatnot.
Yeah. Like the wrestling wasn't great. It was punch, kick, 2-minute match, and off you go. But for whatever reason, I went and sought out like I remember only a year or two into me being a fan of wrestling, I would go and hire like 10 weekly videos from Blockbuster, and I would get all the 80s and 90s stuff, like whatever I could find. And Bret Hart was my favorite wrestler. A lot of people wouldn't care for that because they're brought up, they get into wrestling because of a certain style, a certain feel, and anything else kind of isn't what they see wrestling as. And I see that to this day. I have conversations with people and they just can't tolerate a Bret Hart match. And I think they're nuts, but
you know what?
It's true.
But like, it's like Dean Malenko as well, though. Like, I find like, to me, like I know he's really, really good, but I find him like so fucking boring to watch. Like, I can't, like, he's good, but like, I just can't get into Dean Malenko's matches.
Sure.
That's where like the Bret Harts and the Shawn Michaels come into it, because they add that extra element that he had. He had like 1,000 different moves, more. He had a higher repertoire than those guys, but they had a pretty good element. But also too, Shawn had a bit of high flying, spotty. Bret had a bit more old school sort of move set. So it was, and also too, they weren't that small. Dean was a pretty small guy. You know what I mean? So they're actually reasonably big. In compared to, like, obviously weren't as big as like Hulk and whatnot, but I think they were. To me, I thought that they were like the perfect balance of both worlds. You know what I mean? As like a Kurt Angle, he's like the perfect balance of both worlds. So
sure.
I think it's important. I don't know. I just, that's just my point of view. I see it's like monkey see, monkey do. They watch what's going on, and that's what they want to do. Like, oh, we're going to start the match with a powerbomb. You go for it, bro. You know what I mean? Like, you go for it, because it's just, I don't know. I like.
Personally, I think a lot of the wrestling over the past 5-10 years has been the best ever. Obviously, not all of them. I'm not generalizing. I'm just saying there are a lot of fantastic wrestlers at the moment. So, in that, they are the people coming up at the moment, the trainees coming up. They are seeing that and wanting to emulate that, but it's the whole running before you can walk. A lot of, let's say, for example, like your Okada, your Ospreay, those kinds of guys who are having these just incredibly beautifully told matches with incredible storytelling in ring, but they both came from backgrounds where they learned how to do it properly. They learned the fundamentals. Ospreay coming from the UK, Okada coming through the New Japan dojo. Yeah. That's not the same as a lot of the guys in this kind of situation on a local scene level who aren't getting that same foundation. So they're going out there trying to emulate this. They're trying to emulate, like, the highest of the high level stuff without having the underneath. And when the underneath isn't there, that stuff doesn't work. That's how I see it.
No, 100%. I mean,
whereas you're right. 80s wrestling, 90s wrestling, it was very, very similar. A lot of very similar moves and stories and holds and selling and that kind of thing. A little bit less complex, I think.
No, you're right. Oh, just keep going, Piers. Sorry, what were we going to say?
No, I was just going to say, but we were talking about earlier about like the more, quicker, fast-paced, content as well. And do you think that's kind of forced the hand with professional wrestling as well to make it more fast-paced? Like, because I've seen some matches, man, like there's no room that these guys are even taking a breath. Like, it's just like move after move after move. It looks cool. It looks great. But like, there's like, I mean, like, are you? It's so fast and so quick. Like, why not? Like, the crowd doesn't have time to react to every single thing that you're doing.
Yeah, true. I think though, like, I love the Attitude Era because it's got that nostalgic feel. But I often go back and watch it, and man, there was no breath in some of those matches. That was just boom, 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 boom. Like, I actually think in some ways, 20 years ago was quicker than a lot of what I'm seeing today.
Right. Actually, it was, especially the way they're shooting them off, the way they're reversing them and stuff like that. Now it's a bit more slow and paused and whatnot. Where back then, Kurt Hennig, Bret Hart used to just turn. You know what I mean? There's a natural movement there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where now it's a bit more robotic because that's the way they've been taught to slow it down. So
correct.
But look, I see that, you know, back in 2004, we used to have like the Nigel McGuinnesses and all those guys come do shows with us, and they're fresh from Ring of Honor, but they get told to do certain things. You know what I mean? They go, no, it's Ring of Honor. We have to do this and this. They come do that shows with us. It's like they're not going to do all that stuff. No, we're just going to do the basic moves and whatnot. Just get the reps in, and you know, simple. So they're all capable of doing it, but also too, it just depends on the platform they're given. You know what I mean? A lot of companies don't let you do certain things. You know, they want something done, something fancy, something spectacular. So, yeah, I don't know. That's just my view on that.
You're right. I've been told. I've worked places where I was told, I want you to do a match that gets lots of gifts, which I laughed at. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, I've been told that before. You do get different direction, and obviously, if that's what a company wants to be known as and known for, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But that's not who I am.
So tell me, what was your mindset going into when you actually when you were starting to go overseas and get momentum? What was your mindset like? What were you actually thinking? Because did you have like that motivation, that drive? Did you have anybody, you know, helping you along the way? Like, what were you thinking?
Never that. Not the motivation. The motivation was always there. Never that ambition to get to the top, because I didn't think it was possible. Because when I was going overseas, it was from 2007 to 2012, multiple times is when I did a lot of long-term stints training, wrestling the indies in different countries. And no one had made it at that point. No one from Australia. So it wasn't even an option. It was just, sweet, I've got a connection, generally through Hartley Jackson and a lot of the Perth guys. Adelaide and Perth guys were starting to move around a bit, so I was kind of following them. And it was just cool. They've got a connection with the NWA in America. That sounds cool. Let's go base ourselves there for 3 months. And then you'd go there and you'd train with whoever the hookup was with. And then it was, oh, there's a show this week and they want you on it. Cool, let's do that. It was just one foot in front of the other. There was no ambition. And to be honest, me personally, I'm not a long-term goal kind of guy. Like, I'm very short-term, because I can be pessimistic in a way or realistic. I kind of think, you know, the odds are pretty slim. Let's not put all our eggs in that basket. Yeah. But that's never taken my motivation away. My motivation's always been there to just learn. I just wanted to learn something, or wrestle somewhere new, or wrestle someone new, do something different. That was kind of always my motivation through that time. And it wasn't until like 2014 was when I had my first WWE tryout, and that was just after Emma and Buddy had just started to get signed. So that's when it was like, oh, you know, this might become something. It's at least someone has done it, so the door is slightly open. And that's when my motivation and aspirations changed big time. And that's when I kind of went full steam ahead from there.
Wow.
And like, once you were over there and you were training and that time, you know, to sort of be around it consistently, like, what was some of the things like that you saw that were like major differences on what they were doing there compared to what, you know, training places were doing here?
The last training school I actually went to overseas would have been in 2012 when I was at 01. So I was staying at the 01 dojo for 3 months. So that, obviously being Japanese culture, automatically very different to what we do over here. But because I was at the time training with Wrestle Rampage, or could have been known as many different names back then. We've changed multiple times, but Wrestle Rampage was influenced by New Japan Dojo. Hartley Jackson had trained at the Inoki Dojo, brought back a lot of those trainings and a lot of that attitude. So it was actually very similar to what I was already doing. I was already doing the squats, the push-ups, the grappling, the jiu-jitsu, even like a bit of lucha. I was training with Akudo Hidaka over there, who, for my opinion, the most underrated junior heavyweight of all time. And he was very lucha influenced while still being very Japanese style. So I didn't find it was too much different to what we were doing, just harder, more intense, longer. Every training was 3 hours every day. And then you would go and do your weights afterwards. And then you would, you know, go travel on the bus to a show a long distance away. And there were no days off. That was every single day. So that was the biggest difference. Just being surrounded at all times by pro wrestling. There was no rest. We didn't even get to really be tourists at all. It was just everything is wrestling at all times. You got hurt, you got injured, you had to keep going. That was the biggest difference, being able to shut off real life and full-time job and family and girlfriend and all the rest and just be a wrestler. And I feel like there's a lot of fake it till you make it in wrestling, but I feel like it's a good thing. You have to have confidence in what you do. And if you're lacking confidence like I used to big time self-confidence issues. But then when you're around those people and you're around well-known wrestlers and you're training with top quality guys and you're doing the shows all day, every day, you feel like a wrestler. That was the first time I ever felt like a pro wrestler. And for me, that changed everything. It changed my mindset completely.
Yeah.
Did you ever see people that were there, like in the thick of it with you, training, doing this day in, day out, as you said, like doing the long sessions, the weights, then traveling? Did you ever see people just actually break from it and just go like, fuck, like I need out, like I'm like done, hit the eject button, out the fucking window, let's go?
I never did. I never did in my group. But I heard so many stories. Because we had the connection with 01 for many years. So I would hear when, you know, some of my like training partners in Adelaide would go over for a few months and they would come back and tell me stories of so-and-so from this country who escaped in the middle of the night and all this stuff. But no, I had a pretty good group. I was training there with a wrestler by the name of Jason Lee. He was also in the Cruiserweight Classic with me from Hong Kong. He was at the time a young boy, a young lion, just learning how to wrestle. So we were all treated very similar, but, you know, they were trying to fatten him up and they were trying to feed him and turn him into a big heavyweight wrestler and stuff. So he was kind of that young boy. And then I was with a British wrestler by the name of Eddie Ryan. And we all stuck it out for the whole time. I think a lot of that was just because we had each other, which helped a lot.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, because that the reason why I ask is because I can just imagine like that would be like almost like a boiling pot for a lot of people, where it would get to a point where it would just boil over and it's just like, yep, done.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. This is not me blowing smoke up my own ass, but I love it. I love it. I've always loved like that kind of.
You like the grind?
And I say this all the time, like the amount of people that I see who will come to we don't run tryouts anymore. We run open days. So basically it's like a come and try. No one gets turned away. You can come in, go through a very basic training session and decide if you want to keep doing it. But between that and the tryouts that we used to run, I couldn't believe how many people, you know, would show up 20 minutes in and just be done with it. And the first drop of sweat and see you later, I'm done with pro wrestling. My earliest memory of any pro wrestling training was watching a Louis Theroux episode at the WWF Power Plant. And he went there and they made him squat until he threw up everywhere. So before I started wrestling, that's what I thought pro wrestling was. I thought on day one, when I'm 15 years old, I went into the Monster Factory and I went in fully thinking like, this, I'm gonna end up spewing this whole session and I'm gonna be cooked. So it kills me how no one goes in with that same expectation. Like I just can't believe that people think it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
So I've loved the grind. I've always loved the grind, and I've always wanted to do that. That's what I love.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Do you think you're as well in the ring? How do you feel when you're actually in there? Like, do you zone out and you're just yourself? How do you feel when you're actually out there? Like, are you comfortable out there? Because I know a lot of people when they go out there, right, they're not comfortable, they're not confident. And to me, I think the reason being, if you're confident in your skill set, in your mindset, I feel that you don't get nervous. You don't. I'm sure you do, but like I'm saying, what's your mindset when you actually when you walk in there?
In the ring,
Yeah,
completely confident, no nerves, nothing. Which I kind of in a way hate because I don't get the same
excitement.
relief and enjoyment and excitement out of wrestling that I used to when I was terrified.
Yeah,
But I still get nervous. It depends how often I'm wrestling too, because I'm in Perth now and I'm not traveling as much as I used to. I don't wrestle as much as I used to, so I still get really nervous. But I found that when I was wrestling really often, those nerves kind of disappeared altogether. But yeah, like I had a match 2 weeks ago, a week or two ago, and felt great all day, totally confident, no dramas. And then maybe half an hour before my match, I got real nervous, and I was just to the point where I could barely move. And I was like, what's going on? Like, I'm not worried about anything, but I'm just, and I think it's that high expectation.
people
It's
put
not
too much
about,
people put too much pressure on you. They go, "Oh, can't wait to see Damian Slater versus blah blah
yeah,
blah," and somebody tells you that, you go, "Oh fuck," you know what I mean? Or somebody comes up to you and goes, "Oh, I've been looking forward to this." I'm like, "Fuck
yeah.
off!" Like,
I'm so pumped for this. This is the reason why I had to save money for this ticket.
I'm gonna have the most simplest match because I'm like,
Yeah,
fuck,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's always when you got like a 6-minute opener, and you're like, all right, I can not that I ever take the foot off the pedal or half-ass it. It's always my best because I have pride in what I do. But it's like, all right, 6-minute opener, no real expectations. They just want a simple match, and then your opponent or a fan or whatever is like, man, I've been waiting for this match for my whole life. Like, oh no.
I know.
But no, honestly, it's probably more expectations on myself. I'm
We all.
very hard on myself, and I've always got that in me.
Are you,
So
are you
still get
satisfied
nervous.
with your matches? Are you satisfied when you have your matches?
No, never,
Yeah,
never.
none of us.
Sometimes like bits and
Oh,
pieces, but very rarely I could count on one hand where I've watched a match start to finish and been totally happy. I'm pretty good these days. Like I try to find at least some positives.
yeah.
I'm not just fully negative, and I'm very aware that anything that I didn't like is an opportunity to learn from that. To this day, I still learn from what I do. But yeah, very rarely satisfied.
Is it you're a perfectionist? Is that why?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at
I saw in WA that there's a new fed there that does shows without a ring. Have you been to those shows? Like what is it about? Have you seen it?
No, I've seen some clips. I think they run it at one of the breweries, one of the microbreweries over here, and I think they did a show or two at a local like a punk nightclub at one of the local clubs where a lot of bands play. But yeah, no ring. It's just like on the dance floor or on the floor or whatever. But they use a lot of our EPW guys, but I don't do any of those shows.
That's crazy. Like, how can you bump on having a ring? Like, I just heard about it. I haven't seen any footage of it, but I feel like if you're in the same city as them, like, or same state, whatever.
A lot of my trainees, a lot of my students do their shows. Man, I don't want to bump in a ring as it is, let alone a dance floor. So,
but is that that's potentially can cause some serious damage if you're bumping on the floor? Surely.
Yeah, hey, look, I've bumped on the floor many times in my life. My body's not the same as it used to be. I don't think. Again, I can't speak because I haven't really watched any of their stuff. I've only seen like little clips or photos or whatever. But I don't think they go heavy on the floor bumping. I don't think that's what it is. But I haven't really seen it enough.
Yeah, no, it just interests me because it's like, when I see no ring, and I'm like, how does that work? Isn't that the whole thing about wrestling is the ring itself? But I don't know. But I'm intrigued to see what they do.
Yes, we're evolving. That's what it's about. We're evolving. The business
Hey,
is
it
going.
would save on ring hire costs. So
Could you imagine?
maybe a no ring, no venue event next.
No ring crew. The wrestlers get to party afterwards. You know what I mean? Don't have to worry about going to Macca's. So it's good.
Just get the after Mackey's feed. So yeah.
I used to do like back when I used to go to like a lot of like punk and hardcore shows when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I used to do like alleyway gigs just to kind of save cash. So you'd kind of hear through the grapevine that this band was playing in an alleyway, and they would give you the address last minute, and you'd go in there and they'd play until the cops come and shut it down. I reckon there's potential there. Alleyway wrestling.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool. We should
Well,
do it.
There's these guys in America that actually do it, and they actually go and do like wrestling matches in the street or like in a McDonald's and stuff like that. And I always thought they were just like a bunch of people that were untrained, but like I did a bit of like looking into it. Apparently, like they're all indie workers that just have gone viral from doing this shit out in public.
Yeah.
So many crazy ideas, man. Like the only thing that I've done that's actually close to that is when I was in the States, a reputable company decided to do a show at a bar, and they go, "Rob, you're doing a shot match." I go, "What the fuck is that?" So every minute you take a shot. They pause the fucking match. I'm like, "You're kidding." After about 4 shots, you know what I mean? They started giving me water because we were drunk and falling over each other. It was the shits, but it was like, fuck me. Like,
They used to call them drunken death matches. I remember watching a few of those. Yeah, like I remember watching a few like CZW, I think, did it back in the day. I used to be a big fan of ultra-violent wrestling, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Go figure. I was into Dean Malenko and William Regal matches, and I was into light tubes. But I was 12 years old, so.
Wow,
you watched that shit at 12. Jesus, fuck.
Yeah, man. The first independent company I ever got into was CZW. That was 2001. I was more like 13 at that point. But yeah, man. Yeah, watched some crazy stuff.
That was the same as me, man. Back around like I would have been about 18 or 19 around that time. But like even before then, we used to get the magazines and CZW and XPW and all that sort of stuff. And like it was the same thing, you're drawn to it because you go, what the fuck is this barbaric shit? You know what I mean? Like this is wild. And then it's like, dude, I was one of the first people to do like tape trading and shit like that like for that sort of stuff. Yeah, like I had a lot of like tapes and DVDs of that shit from back in the day. But like now I look at it and go, man, a lot of deathmatch stuff, it's hard to stomach now.
I'm the same, man. I'm the same. Exactly the same.
I thought you still like it, Piers.
I like some of it, bro, but it just depends. Huh?
You're a mark. You still ask that question all the time about deathmatch wrestling. You love it.
I'm just saying I do like I like certain workers, but I don't. It depends who's wrestling. It's if they can wrestle, then yes. If they're just gimmicking each other, then no.
Piers has become very educated in this day and age. To pro wrestling. He's starting to understand exactly the fundamentals. He's learning the basics, which is great.
Wine.
Hanging out with you, Robbie, does that, but please continue.
I was going to say, with the actual training itself, does it bring you satisfaction to see these guys get better and better each day? Is that something?
For sure. I've said it many times, but I think that the other side of the wrestling business probably at times brings me more joy than actually performing. There's been so many times where I've wrestled and had what was a good match and well received, and I kind of just felt numb, like it was just another more of the same. But when I see people who I've trained make progress and do great things, and for me, a lot of my biggest enjoyment has been getting the camps where we get interstaters and internationals, and they'll come over for a whole week, and we'll get to spend that time with them for 6 hours a day and just watch them grow and see those light bulbs go off. That for me, that's so rewarding. I love it, and I can do that forever. I can't bump forever, but I can definitely train people forever. So I love it.
It's awesome.
Is that something that, like, could you see yourself opening up your own, like, training school eventually? But, like, obviously in line with the online stuff, like, would you like to have your own facility?
If I won the lottery, maybe. I see. That's the thing. I've never been big on anything that involves investing money
Yeah.
or
Frugal,
risking anything business wise.
Are you frugal, are you?
I'm happy to stay in my safe spot and do what I can. But like long term, absolutely, I would love to have a space where I could run my own school. But like, I love what I'm doing at EPW school. I'm the head coach at the moment, alongside Stormy. I love what we do there. I feel like I moved over here 6.5 years ago now, and I feel like I was able to put in a lot of positive changes alongside others. We've all made positive changes, and I still think there's a long way to go until we get the EPW school to where I picture it being. But I'm happy with what we've done. I'm proud of what we've done. So I can definitely 100%. I will be doing a lot more in the online space and giving opportunities to people to, be part of our community and learn regularly, all the time with what I'm doing. But my own place, yeah, we'll see, maybe.
But man, before we sort of start wrapping it up here, man, where can everyone find all this content, and where can they actually go and subscribe and get this on a weekly basis?
Sure. If you go to worldbeaterwrestling.com, that'll link you straight to my YouTube channel at the moment. In the next few months, it will link you to something very different and more professional. But it's a good start. If you could subscribe to my YouTube, I put videos out frequently. I've got over 200 videos now with different pro wrestling lessons, from techniques to just general advice to all sorts of stuff, to conditioning drills. You can also subscribe to or follow any of my social media pages, Damian Slater on Facebook and Twitter, D-Slats on Instagram, because some jerks got my handle, unfortunately. But yeah, man, everything I put out is free. So if you want to get a different perspective on pro wrestling and learn from what I've done and what I've learned from my mentors, then check me out, give us a follow, and let me know what you think.
Awesome.
Absolutely, man. Definitely. But man, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. This has been a great conversation. I think this has been a really good podcast that Rob's wanted to have for a long time. And hopefully we can do a lot more of these as well. But man, we definitely have to get you back on in the near future, man. I appreciate you coming on. But guys, make sure you go and check out our sponsor at sleeves.com. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount. But gentlemen, have you got any upcoming shows you want to give a quick plug to that you're going to be on either this weekend or the next couple of weeks?
Oh, nothing too upcoming. I've got a couple of things that haven't been announced interstate coming up soon. So if you're a wrestling fan in Melbourne or Brisbane, then I would keep my eyes peeled. Our next show in Perth for EPW is Vendetta, which is October 28th at The Point in Merriwa. I've got a massive tag title defense on that event.
Nice. Fantastic.
Rob?
Yeah, we do rock and roll wrestling this Saturday at the City Diggers. So be there. I take on Lee Moreau, which is should be fun. So looking forward to it.
There you go.
Get your ass.
Make sure you go and check out those events, guys. But until next time, we'll see you again very soon. Take care. All the best. Peace.